What's going on, beautiful people? It's your man Wally, the Southern Kid with the City Swag, coming at you with a brand new episode of MX Sunday Soul.
I won't even try to tell it all, but God knows, yeah, He knows.
All right, yo, we got a real good show for y'all today. Jonathan McReynolds stopped by to have a conversation about his brand new album, People. Take a look. What's going on, man? How you doing today?
Good, brother. How about you?
Doing good. Glad to have you with us today. Got a whole lot to talk about as far as everything that's been going on with you recently. I just want to say congratulations first off for with your album People and going to #1 on the charts. You've already had a #1 album before, so I believe your stats. What does it say? 22 years believing, 8 years touring, 5 years teaching, 2 Billboard albums, and then 1 song that was #1, 3 Grammy nominations, 8 Stellas, and 1 Dove Award. First of all, let's talk about the creative process for the album People.
Well, yeah, man. I started off just kind of living a tough year, man. Great professionally, but 2019 was a whack year for me personally, man. Some things I really had to learn going into my last year, my 20s, or actually that was my last year, my 20s, going into my 30s. I had to really figure out some things, man. I had to learn some things about myself and some practices, some thoughts that, didn't need to be carried into their 30s. So I just kind of, journaled it like I normally do, man. All my songs songs like this, these studio albums kind of run like a journal almost.
So you did a visual album. I watched that twice last night, and I was trying, the first time around, I looked at the aesthetic of everything. I didn't really get a chance to get deeply into the music. So I said, let me listen to the whole album without the visual album. Then went back and watched the visual album again, and it made even much more sense. One thing I'm appreciative for is the just diversity that you have in the whole entire visual album. So how long did it take to put that together?
We taped it in about 3 days.
Okay.
If that, maybe 2 days. And of course, editing and stuff takes a while, but music creation process, each song probably takes a day or two if I put my mind to it. And then each song, visual album, the whole thing probably took 2 days to tape.
So I saw another video of you actually performing, and I just wanted to talk about your comfortability being natural when you're in front of audiences as far as telling your story and telling the truth about your story, because I think that is so imperative for audiences now who are into Christian and gospel music to be receiving that type of music from people who are honest about their stories. So how did you get to a point where you were able to be transparent without, being concerned about people?
I'm always concerned about people. And the thing is, so I haven't mastered it. It's just something in me. It's something that is just my personality. It's something that's just the way I'm built, that I like to tell the whole story. I like to give the best accurate answer. I like to dig deep and try to figure out what the whole truth of the matter is. And maybe I'm just dumb enough to tell everybody about that. I'm dumb enough to express it. What we do over here, we've kind of formed a whole creative team label for the Life Room. And what we believe over here is show your work. Growing up being a nerd in school, sometimes I could be able to figure out the answer in my head. So I just write down the answer. After a while, my teacher got upset at me. She started just to mark it wrong. Even if I got the right answer, she marked it wrong. Mm-hmm. Why? Because I didn't actually show the work that it took to get there. When you show your work, that authenticates your answer. That makes people understand how to relate to it and even duplicate it. And so when we come to this Christian thing, sometimes we just give the answer and say, Jesus, love him.
Yeah.
Praise him. He'll be all right. He got you. And sometimes we don't write the work that it took to get there. So I always just love to write down the work, the good, bad, and the ugly of the Christian life that even led me to the cool, great Jesus answers I got.
I want to move on and talk about, speaking of moving on, let's talk about Moving On, the track.
Yeah.
The visual that you just dropped with Mally. I love the energy of that. And of course, it was continuing to tell the story. How did you link up with Mali Music to do that track?
Oh, me and Molly, we've been doing this and we've been brothers for a long time, man. So,
Okay.
He got into this well before I did. So when I first even started, we had Molly to look at for inspiration and encouragement. Mm-hmm. And so we've been cool for a long time and friends for a long time. Just never actually worked together and did anything. But as I was writing this song and kind of doing a track at home, I was like, I think this has Molly's name written all over it. And so I went and found him. And we just happened to have a show coming up in Florida, and I told him that we're gonna record after that show. And I didn't have no studio, but I brought my equipment and put it in the hotel room, and we recorded it in the hotel room, real ghetto, but it was turned out good.
That's actually innovative, man. I was thinking about the quarantine and everything. So all of this took place before quarantine actually went into effect. And, it was kind of like just in time almost, because a lot of artists have halted, any type of promo or anything. And here you are dropping a whole project, not only just an album, but a visual album.
Yeah, man, I ain't worried about no quarantine. God is still God, period. Yeah, and the music that he gave me, to me, fit the quarantine life better than, I could have ever hoped for. Mm-hmm. When we're talking about being delivered from people, we're talking about inviting God to our situation. We're talking about becoming a cathedral, especially since we can't go to cathedrals right now.
Right.
And then having a visual album content that, people are actually going to be at home to, appreciate and kind of just sit there and reflect and, consume everything that we're given visually and musically. I think this is an unprecedented time. And so this was kind of an unprecedented rollout as well. And I think God already planned that out. We didn't know. He didn't tell us about these plans.
Right.
Because we probably would have changed something.
Right.
Once we got in there and we realized, what I think God was setting us up. I think he understood the time this was going to be released. And he gave us some music that could help us get free, even while we're on lockdown.
So do you think after COVID is over, do you think that more people, because people were already worshiping God in their homes, there were a lot of people, they may have been ridiculed or, people may speak against it, but, or advise that you actually, forsake not the assembly, but do you see or do you foresee any more people turning more to at-home worship even after COVID-19 is over?
Well, here's the thing, man. We were talking about turning the living rooms into life rooms, and we've been doing that for 7-8 years because we wanted to make sure that after Sunday was over, after church was over, Monday through Saturday, people were still making room for God in their lives and making that, taking that same church experience and being able to replicate it. And intensify it and deepen it even when they go home. Right. And so we never wanted to replace Sunday service, but we wanted to make sure that it was maintained. That same spirit, that same focus, that same attitude, enthusiasm, it needs to reside through your entire week. It can't be church-based. So I am very happy if, something like this happens and it allows us to de-churchify our faith. It should not be, Sunday service can't be the center of everything. It can't be the end all and be all for everything. Oh, well, I go to church, therefore I'm Christian. Oh, I didn't get to church this week, so I'm not as Christian. Either way, I think it's a great time that the generation is learning that if you really gonna love Jesus and you really gonna have faith in this thing, you have to take him home with you. He doesn't live in church. He never asked to live in church. He wants to live in your heart.
Before all of this had even COVID and everything, quarantine took place, there had been certain people who had brought up a hashtag on social media. And I talked to we were talking Kira Shear about this last week, about what is it going to take to start bringing back people into the church. Those who have left the church because of church hurt. When you put out an album such as an album like People, there's a lot of things that I took from that I would say, honestly, when I was going through my dilemma and, on the verge of leaving church, if I would have heard something like this is something that could have potentially helped me stay right there where I was instead of just, deciding to move away from the church. So when we discuss and think about what is it going to take to start bridging that gap and healing relationships. What is your opinion on that?
I think that we have to. There's a whole bunch of stuff we got to do. First up, but ultimately, it all starts with just you. And I hope that people understand that the song "People" is not about people. It's about you. It's about the place that you give people. It's about who you actually worship. It's actually who you actually seek approval from. It's actually who you look for validation and identity from. It can't be people, because people are just as whack as you. They're just as short-sighted as you. They're just as confused and trying to figure things out as you. They're struggling with some kind of issue just like you are.
Right.
And so at the end of the day, we can't use people as our main mirror, our main, definer. We have to make sure that we line it up with God. So before you even go see people, whether it's at work or at church or anywhere else, what are you saying to yourself? What is God saying to you in the morning? Are you a strong black man? Are you a man of God? Are you one that walks in power and wisdom? Are you walking in peace? Are you sure that you are loved by God? Are you secure within yourself? All that has to be kind of locked in and rehearsed before you deal with anybody, because life in general, it pounds against that. It hits against that. It fights against everything that God wanted you to think. You fight against everything that God wants you to think about yourself. And so it's very important that we do that work ourselves. We need to be healed. We need to be toughened up. And I'm not even just talking about so that people can insult you. I'm talking about so people can correct you.
You were talking about devotional services at one point, and I know you were talking about 80 songs that sounded like, and growing up. Let's talk about your experience and your younger years. I heard you say in this particular YouTube video talking about you were such a church boy, you wore a suit every Sunday, you probably had 100 suits, one in every color, and just your experience and your first discovery of God, and how you grew early on in your relationship.
Yeah, man. Well, I think first, a lot of us church folks are church boys, church kids.
Yeah.
We see the music first.
Yeah.
So you attracted to the music first. To me, it wasn't like as far as church goes, I appreciate the way my mother raised me. I appreciate the way my church was, because it wasn't like bang you over the head type church. And it was Kojic, and I know sometimes Church of God in Christ gets a bad rap for being a little strict or being a little elitist or extra religious. My church wasn't too bad. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they held some, fashion standards up. They didn't want me to wear an earring while I played the organ.
Yeah.
And they preferred that the ladies wore skirts and not pants. But at the end of the day, none of that to me kept you from getting into the church. I think that, as workers, as people who are on the forefront, as people who are ministering, which is what the choir is what the band is, what the preachers are, we sometimes have to understand that we are held to a higher standard. Why? Because everything that we do, it will be multiplied. Every way that we look and act and say, it will be multiplied by people who don't know. Paul was very serious about that type of stuff. Hey, look, I know y'all know more than everybody. I know that the God in you and the research that you've had allows you to feel like it's okay to do this. But I just want you to know that when you do that, somebody else who doesn't know that much is going to copy you without all the context, without understanding, without all the years in church. And so you got to be mindful about that. And so, I learned the responsibility. I learned the music very early, even before I really learned God, before I even really learned the faith. I would say music first, then responsibility. Then I got to see the moves of God. I got to see people that just walked into church be thrown all over the dang on church because of what they were feeling. I watched my mother, who I knew to be a very truthful and no fluff person, be, slain in the spirit and be speaking in tongues and be overcome. And all these other amazing people that I trusted and I knew were very intelligent, educated people. I watched them, kind of be very radically, impressed upon by this invisible force that I couldn't see. I also was watching how he was kind of aiding me in my growth as a musician and as a man, and how he's protecting me, and how I felt like when I walked up to people, whether it was some GDs in my neighborhood, or whether it was anything, that I seemed to have almost like a big brother behind me. You know what I'm saying? I walked in with a lot more power than I expected. And so I saw all that type of stuff happening. And it really wasn't until I got into high school and college when I started to really try to live it out that I had to really seek God as, just in a relationship. I wasn't covered anymore by everybody else's prayers and culture. I had to learn how to set my own atmosphere. That was when I really started to go for God, not just, in, oh God, where you at? But logically too, I'm a nerd. And so I wanted to go figure out, like, does this even make sense? Like, what about all the other religions? You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
So through that whole thing, man. And the songs I wrote, like No Gray and early songs like that, were all me trying to figure that thing out. I'm amazed that they were used. I'm amazed that God had a plan for them and they've helped other people. Because to me, I just remember being a very, and I guess I still am, just a very like normal human trying to figure this thing out. Not anybody's minister or, great faith influence or anything like that. And so I would say that it's always been progressive. But as a church boy, the things we normally learn first is the music, the responsibility, and the crazy.
Yeah. Oh, you got that right in that exact order, man. Thank you so much for sharing all that today. I see you got your guitar with you. Trying to see if we can get you to do a little something for the last 10 seconds while we're on here.
You don't want to hear this right now. I'm so under the weather a little bit. I got a little sinus infection, man. But I was just seeing if it was in tune.
Tell us what's next then. What's going on? I know you just dropped everything. It's still fresh, but what are the follow-up plans in the next few months for Jonathan McReynolds?
Yeah, man, y'all got to check out the new album and visual album, People. I'm really excited about it. I hope you enjoy it. I think it's really perfect and weirdly, eerily relevant to the situation we're in right now. Check that out because we got a lot of other stuff coming. We have more music that we plan on releasing this year. We have, within my label, within my creative team, we're going to be working on some other folks as well and got some stuff to present. We got some great video content to present that I want you guys to see. Just how things are done, how things are made, the testimonies that come through it, the hopes and desires and tears and all the other mess that happens. And I'm really excited for you guys to see that. It's going to be a really good year for content. And I just hope y'all rock with me.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it as well, man. Thank you again so much for joining us. And we hope and we wish that that looking forward to the new music. Absolutely. And the content thing, just keep doing your thing, man. Keep telling your story. Keep being transparent. It's helping a lot of people. It's even blessed me, even over the last 24 hours of me doing my research up on you beyond what I already knew. So really appreciate you, man. You're doing good work for the kingdom.
I do. I appreciate that, for real.
Thank you so much for stopping by, man. Have a good day.
Kojic brother to another. Amen.
Peace.
Yo, thank you all so much for joining us for episode 2 of MX Sunday Soul. Catch us next week. We got a whole lot more coming for you. Keep it locked. Peace.
I won't even try to tell it all, but God knows, yeah, He